think it's maybe necessarily a good idea, at least with our current political framework, to have one president serve for 30 years at a time, right? We don't necessarily want, or most people in this country, historically speaking, don't want a dictator, right? But I'm perfectly fine with transferring that political power every so often to a new leader, a new generation, a new party, whatever. I'm pretty apolitical these days. I'm just trying to make an analogy here, of course. But my point is, I definitely don't agree with any centralization on the BIP 110 side. And so, I just want to answer that. That's all. Thanks, guys. I have to run.
Yeah, it sounds like you think you're picking the lesser of two evils. Is what you're getting at. But both
No,
maybe are.
I don't support a perpetual single group of being able to make a soft executive decision for the rest of the network, because that's essentially what's been happening with Core. I mean,
but that's not what's been happening.
Not.
What you're talking about is consensus changes. You're talking about consensus changes, and that's not what's been happening.
Well, even Core is in flux, right? It's not like the Core team is this set in stone group of people. It's constantly changing and updating.
Okay,
right?
The op return change was a great example of this, because it was a default policy change, right? This was something that was just a soft setting that anybody could.
Adam, are you running knots? But you're running knots, right? So who cares what Bitcoin Core set with their implementation if you're running Bitcoin knots?
Well, I mean, I care for everybody else that is unaware, right?
But everybody else is choosing. Everybody else is choosing to run Bitcoin Core voluntarily. No one's got a gun to their heads.
Okay, the problem.
Okay, let's reset, because I think Adam is just throwing the red flag up that he personally is worried about centralization issues. So I think that's a valid point. We can chew on that one or beat that dead horse as long as we want. But Bitcoin Anon has his hand up. So go ahead, Bitcoin Anon.
Yeah, Adam said it very well.
You're far away again. You're in the bathroom and your phone is in the kitchen. Can you get a little closer or something?
Yeah. Adam said it very well. I mean, I have the same exact motivations, but I also want to remind that they were going to completely remove the ability to do anything with the filters. They were going to deprecate it. And they decided to basically, under social pressure, they caved and brought it back. And then when you look at the fact that they're backporting the filter changes, but they're not backporting the security fixes, the incentives are very clear what they're trying to do.
Trying to make compact block relay. And
what's happening right now is that people are very confused between policy and consensus. That's what the issue is. We have people that are not technically capable of understanding what the difference between consensus and policy.
No, I understand it quite clearly, and many of us do. But the problem is you guys like sort of eliding the differences or sort of switching between the two. I think a helpful way of looking at it is that there's an overarching category that's above consensus and that's above. So just to bring everyone up to speed, mempool policy or policy has to do with what nodes relay. Consensus has to do with really what ends up acceptable and being mined in blocks. But I think there's a higher category that is sort of the leading indicator for all these things. And that's what I've been calling Bitcoin culture in my last few videos. Bitcoin culture includes things like our antipathy to spam and shitcoiners and people who deal in bad faith. And the problem is Bitcoin culture has been infiltrated by stablecoin culture, by fiat culture, and by shitcoiner culture. And we actually had a shitcoiner who was a Bitcoin Core maintainer in the form of Gloria Zhao. And so this is the concern. And what people like Mr. Hodl and Wicked and Shinobi want to do, they always want to drag us back down to the level of code and technicals where they're more comfortable. And while I think this is important, I don't think you need to be a coder to understand these things. What you do have to understand, though,
I'm not a coder.
The network as a whole does not need to. The network as a whole needs to show hostility to spam. And you can do it in many ways. You can do it at the mempool level. You can do it at the consensus level. But if we can't even, this whole debate started out with people like Wicked and Hodl and Shinobi unable to tell us what spam was and playing these linguistic games with that. And it's progressed from there.
I can even tell you what it is. There's 100% spams happening on the network. I'm just saying you can't do
hang
anything
on,
about
guys.
it.
Hang on. We're gonna go in hand order because Wicked is next. So let's let Matt finish, and then we're gonna go to Wicked.
So yeah,
Matt, were you finished? Go ahead.
I'll finish. Basically, if Bitcoin culture becomes corrupted, then it flows through to the consensus rules and to the policy. And part of what I'm maintaining here is that it's in the process of being corrupted.
Yeah, Matt, it kind of goes back to when you make little tweaks in code that opens the door for some other things. It's almost like down the road, it should have been a consensus type issue, but it kind of snuck in the back door on us. And then suddenly here we are with the ruins and ordinals and everything else. And who knows if we keep that alive. What should have been a consensus issue now is like snuck in via some weird thing on the, through core. Anyway, Wicked.
Can I just
Over
respond
to
to that really quickly?
Yeah, please.
Because I
Please.
think it's a helpful metaphor for people who haven't been following this debate as close. I agree with what you just said. And an analogy might be something like the U.S. Constitution and the Second Amendment. What these guys on the other team would be arguing, no, you still have the Second Amendment. There hasn't been any consensus changes to the U.S. Constitution, whereas in fact, the Constitution has been corrupted and degraded. Just the fact that you need gun licenses, things like this, are attacks on the Second Amendment. You can say, well, no one's changed the Second Amendment and the Supreme Court hasn't changed it either. But that's an example of U.S. constitutional culture being weakened. And I think something similar is happening with Bitcoin culture.
That's a great analogy. Wicked.
Yeah, so I think this idea of Bitcoin culture is completely outdated, right? I mean, Bitcoin is a network that is worldwide, global. When's the last time you talked to a Bitcoiner in Vietnam or a Bitcoiner in Thailand or a Bitcoiner, anywhere else in the world, right? I mean, these people all over the world using Bitcoin, there is no singular culture, right? People are using Bitcoin as a tool, as a money, and for other reasons too that you might not agree with. But the point is that this, monolithic, quote unquote, Bitcoin culture is non-existent. Now, I think the main problem that we're facing today with people who want there to be a Bitcoin culture is they have this idea that, they as a group, a small group, can still form and control Bitcoin, and it makes them upset when that's not possible. And the same thing happened with the big blockers. They had these ideas. They thought Bitcoin needed to be a certain way, and they thought if they band it together, they could force it through. But it just doesn't work. Even at that point, Bitcoin was so decentralized and spread, and consensus was virtually impossible to reach in terms of a hard fork, but even soft forks were hard. That it just wasn't possible. And I mean, it's getting harder and harder and harder. And so as this becomes more decentralized and spread out around the world, the culture diminishes. I mean, that's just the thing. There's no dollar culture, right? There's no gold culture. these are just monies that people use as tools for whatever reasons. And Bitcoin's kind of becoming the same way. So, I mean, it's almost like the boomer meme, like shaking his fist, like, you young people don't understand the Bitcoin culture. It's like it doesn't make any sense to even try to maintain that, or it's like when you've got a system that's global, you can't literally, you can't do that. It doesn't make any sense anymore.
Well, this is the problem, and this is the game that you guys are always playing. People like Wicked is they like muddying the waters, and it is true that Bitcoin is a global network now. But what the other side doesn't understand is that it's a monetary network, and it needs to be defended.
We do understand that. We just don't think it needs to be defended because it actually has good incentives already that defend itself.
I think it would be helpful if we don't group people up. I think that would be nice.
What are we doing, Humble?
The people like Wicked, and we, just let's do individual things here.
Oh, like the attacks kind of thing. Hey, we've got a bunch of hands. I didn't see who was next. Humble, did you see the order of hands by any chance?
Asher was next.
Or Punch? Asher?
Hey, guys. About the moral, cultural argument here. I mean, I think everyone here agrees that Bitcoin can be used for enemies, including like for terrorist financing and whatnot. And so I think it's weird to like grandstand about spam when unless you also believe there should be a whitelist within knots. And I don't think I've heard anyone say that. So that's all.
No, these are two very separate. These are two separate issues, and I'm glad you brought this up because this is a common confusion. Bitcoin is money for enemies. It's not data storage for enemies. It's permissionless money. It's not permissionless platform.
Who are you to say that? Like, who said that to you?
Hey, Mr. Huddle, we've been doing really good about not interrupting and letting people get all the way through what they're saying and then responding in kind, and we have other hands. So go ahead, Matt.
Well, this is why we're all here. We're here because Bitcoin's the best money in the world, and this is what Satoshi built. He built the best money in the world. He didn't build an agnostic data storage platform for hosting Lady Gaga videos.
All on the same team here, guys. We're just making sure we're in a good spot.
Can I respond to that? Matt,
please.
Can you just say
Please do.
which you think is worse, terrorist financing or spam? Just if you were going to rank them.
I'd say I'm sorry, I'm going to answer for Matthew. For Bitcoin Network, it's definitely
I want to
spam.
answer for Matthew.
It's definitely spam for the Bitcoin Network.
Okay, let's go Shinobi because he's going to be on another work call.
Terrorists using Bitcoin as money is pretty bullish, actually.
Guys,
hey, Wicked.
Let's
Wicked, let Shinobi go, and then
we'll
switch gears.
Like Matt keeps saying over and is the same way that a dollar bill is a piece of paper that you can draw art on. Bitcoin is a distributed network that maintains a distributed database for the purpose of money. Now, you can do absolutely nothing to stop the fact that it is a database. Just in the same way, you cannot do anything to stop the fact that a dollar bill is a piece of paper that someone can draw on. That is a fact of the universe and reality. And this is one of the core things that's causing confusion at the root of this. And it's people not being able to step down to different levels of abstraction. It is irrelevant what Bitcoin's purpose is, which, yes, is to be money. That is why Satoshi created it. That is something that it must continue doing, or it will not function for any use case at all, because the financial aspect of the incentives is what keeps the system running, but it is a database. And there is absolutely nothing you can do to escape the reality that it is a database. You are spinning wheels and arguing with the universe about reality. You lose. Like, that's just how it works.
No,
even US dollar doesn't want to be defaced or want any spam on it because it's against the law to draw on US money. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that at the CS level, Bitcoin is a database, et cetera. What I was saying is it's not a data storage platform. It's not cloud storage for the world.
Yeah. And this is why we have a block size limit. Like, Matthew, you keep pulling out this Greg Maxwell
That's
quote.
also why we have mempool
You keep
filters
no,
and
it's
a limit
not.
on
It's why we have the block size limit. You keep pulling out this Greg Maxwell quote from years ago about how there is infinite demand for free storage. That is why we have a block size limit, because that limit acts as a forcing function so that people must competitively bid for that space. And whenever the demand exceeds the available space, fees go up and that throttles it. It is impossible to use Bitcoin as Amazon Web Services, as you nonsensically, rhetorically throw out there all the time as a straw man to argue against, because there are 4 megabyte blocks that come once every 10 minutes. And this entire dynamic of the block size limit creates that fee market, that fee pressure, that forcing function. You literally do nothing but construct these nonsense straw men built on twisting quotes out of context or selectively not revealing some facet of something to make these nonsense narratives. It's nonsense. Like, yes, of course, Bitcoin is not a Amazon Web Service replacement. It was specifically designed with the block size limit to make that impossible.
So it's important to note context, right? The Gregory Maxwell quote from 2015, which Matthew did state the year, but maybe people aren't aware. That was during a time when people were arguing over whether or not to have a block size increase. So the quote is directly coming from an era where I got my kid.
Go feed that baby.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, you know what I'm trying to say.
No, I
yeah.
think
Matt,
the
response?
The Greg Maxwell quote is coming on the tails of basically a huge spam debate like we're having now, which was the op return wars.
No,
And
dude, that was a block size
No,
debate.
it's not,
2015
No,
was
it
a
was
block
block
size
Hey
debate.
size.
guys,
it's
Matt's
wrong.
been doing a great
There, it's
job
wrong.
of letting you guys finish your complete
Let me
But
finish.
if
thoughts.
I think
someone
So
is,
it's,
let's let him
I
finish speaking
understand that.
before
Listen,
we go interrupting
all right,
him,
all
so
right.
that nobody has to hit this button right here, and then only I can talk. The rules of this one were, and they've worked super well. I've gotten so much out of this conversation. Appreciate and respect everybody. Now do the same. Let Matt finish his point, and then we'll respond after he's completely finished. Go ahead, Matt. Please. I think we're all unmuted. You have to unmute yourself again, because when one of the hosts mute,
Oh, got it.
there you go.
I didn't see I was
Yep.
muted. So,
Okay.
so I'd have to go back and look at the context for the Greg Maxwell quote, but you can go back for any of these Bitcoin OGs like Peter Wolla, Greg Maxwell. You can go back to the 2013, 2014 era, and you can pull up lots of quotes like this. And this is why op return was created in the first place and was limited, because there's a similar debate going on. And Bitcoin Core devs understood back then that you needed to fight people like Vitalik who wanted to put their crap on chain, and the counterparty people, etc. So this is a whole part of Bitcoin history that people, some of the previous speakers, just want to pretend doesn't exist. And it's important to understand this previous history and to go back and read it, because the war we're fighting now is a little bit of a continuation of what happened during that war.
Shinobi. No? Nothing? We got hands. Wicked, did you want to respond? Nope. Okay.
I never
Who's
got
next? Adam or Asher? Hang on.
Sorry.
Throw your hand up if you want to talk. We've got hands ahead of you. We've got Anon and Adam. I don't know who was next.
I think it was Adam.
Go ahead, Adam.
I wanted to address something that got brought up. Mr. Hoddle brought this up. It's a very common argument I see a lot, and that is that the policy relay defaults don't matter or make a difference, or somehow that they are essentially something that everybody unanimously is agreeing to. And I want to make an analogy here. I loved Matthew's metaphor, by the way, with the Second Amendment stuff, but mine's a little bit different. His is probably way better than mine, but I want to talk about like an example that I relate to personally, and that is, as you know, technology was growing over the last few years, decades, whatever. I was an Android user. I've been using Android phones for a long time, and 15 years ago, every Android phone had, you know, a removable battery, expandable SD card slot, and a headphone jack. And obviously, we're all aware that we don't have those things anymore. And it wasn't necessarily because everybody just agreed that expandable memory was a bad thing. I would probably argue that everybody would appreciate being able to expand their own memory, you know, at their own expense, and not have to buy a more expensive phone and whatnot. So that's kind of my point that I'm trying to make. This was a policy change that only a small handful of people really had a huge problem with, and most people just went along with. And now we're all worse off, and because you know, we basically just went with the default relay policy, if you will, and that essentially is kind of what I'm seeing is happening with the core development and some of the changes, especially as of late. But you could even go back to some of the soft forks as well too. But focusing specifically on, you know, recent relay policy changes, I would argue that these are changes that were made that deeply affected me. Probably don't affect a lot of people, but they ultimately ended up making Bitcoin worse, in my opinion. And that's just, you know, metaphor I want to give you guys all to chew on.
Yum, yum. Anon.
Yeah, the idea that Bitcoin is just data in a database, that's a completely postmodern Marxist nihilist view of the world that's only existed since around 1960s. When you go up to people and you address them and you interact with them, you don't treat them as if they're a bunch of collection of cells and electrical impulses. You treat them as a person. And that's because the optimal function of an object defines its identity. That's affordance theory. And you can see that by how people interact with things they use. You don't use Bitcoin as anything other than money if you're using it for its optimal function. And if anyone says that they use Bitcoin for something different than that, either they're abusing it because they're using it for a suboptimal function, or they're lying to you.
Hey, Matt, did you want to respond to any of those before we kick it over to Asher?
No, I would just second that point, because I think it is important to understand the nihilistic strain that that a lot of people on the core side seem to have, this sort of postmodern Marxist nihilism. And it's the kind of stuff, I used to be at UC Berkeley as well as Gloria Zhao was. And so I understand where this stuff comes from.
Sorry. Asher.
Thank you, Matthew. Maybe you weren't around when Bitcoin started, but it actually did start as a database and it wasn't used as money. It was adopted as money. And particularly, most famously,
what am I missing?
For drug money. So I think this is back to the moral question of like, what should Bitcoin, the database, be used for? And I never got your clear answer, so I can quote you in the future. Is it terrorist financing or spam, which is worse?
Did I read a different white paper?
Well, that's what I'm saying in the white paper, but I recall that like it didn't. The reason we celebrate Pizza Day is because it was the first time anyone really used it operationally as money. I mean, there's plenty of, you know,
there's in the market. That's a misconception.
Famously, sure.